in the high peaks. So
Right.
we're prepared. We have the gear, we have the right food, we have water and lots of water because you always need to pack more than you think you're going to pack. Um, so now we're going to move on to number 2: travel and camp on durable surfaces.
Okay, so we're heading up the trail. We're having a good time, and we start getting up to where the trail becomes kind of steep. And so we're seeing some of this exposed rock that is common in the high peaks. And it's rained the night before, and this rock is looking kind of wet and slippery. Should we go ahead and still just walk straight up it, or should we maybe? It looks like there might be a herd path on the right here on the side of the trail. Maybe we should just go up that. What do you think, James?
That's a great question. I love that question. It's almost like I feel like I'm really on the spot, and I love it. I love it so much. Personally, for me, I'm all about going up the rock slabs myself. It's just like I like that. I just like that challenge. And again, you see these herd paths all around the park that I'm pretty sure you're going to say is not the right way to go. Personally, I'm a big fan of slabs at all times, and I think that's probably where you're going with this.
Yeah, so a lot of the trails in the high peaks were created in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and
Yeah.
a lot of them were followed maybe old game paths or were created for logging. So a lot of them are really straight paths, getting you the shortest distance from A to B, so getting you from that lowest point to the top. And so they don't have a lot of the switchbacks that you might see on maybe some newer built trails, and so a lot of them go up these straight rocks. And for a lot of people who might be coming from certain areas where they see exposed, wet rock, it might seem kind of intimidating. But from our experience there, and I'm sure you've experienced it too, those rock slabs, it actually has pretty good grip. And if we come prepared, if we, followed through with planning ahead and preparing, we have that proper gear, we have our good shoes, maybe our trekking poles, we should be able to get up that rock slab without having to go off of the trail. That was one of the big impacts that we did see while we were there, was the herd paths and just trail widening as well too. People, even if they're not going all the way off the trail and creating a new trail, just stepping kind of on the side and kind of maybe that soft soil, which then starts to erode away as the vegetation breaks down.
Yeah, I like going up the slabs, and I always preach on this podcast what a difference trekking poles makes when you're hiking. It adds a whole new element to, getting up certain things that you might struggle with, getting down and kind of saving your knees, getting across rivers that are just so much easier when you have basically 2 more sets of legs with your trekking poles to cross, to balance and whatnot. Yes, big fan of trekking poles. And in these scenarios, they make it so much easier to get up certain areas. And then you can avoid having to, break through the woods and form a herd path that after 2 weeks of you going through it, it's going to be a lot more traveled from the people behind you. Certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. And also thinking about once we get up above the tree line and we're in these the areas where we're in that alpine vegetation, also just being really conscious of the surfaces that we're choosing to step on. We had some great conversations with some of the summit stewards, who taught us a lot about all the different plants that are growing up there that are remnants from the ice age, and just how delicate this ecosystem is. And just, even one step or several steps from people going off trail can really damage that ecosystem. So doing our best when we're up there to stick to those rocks, making sure we're not stepping in that soft soil as well.
Do the rock walk, everyone. Stay on the rock. Hop from rock to rock. Very easy to do. All right, so take us through number 3.
All right, so number 3 is, just as a reminder, is dispose of waste properly. So there are generally 3 things that we talk about when we talk about disposing of our waste, and that is trash, human waste, and then also gray water. So we're going to have 2 questions today while we're along the trail when it comes to disposing of our waste properly. First, we're out on the trail. We already looked ahead of time and we did our research. We planned ahead and prepared, and we looked at the map and we found out that there is a privy on the trail. So we already know, and so we're ready to go if we have to go to the bathroom. But we have to go before we get to the privy. Dave's got to go poop.
Mm-hmm. Classic Dave.
Classic Dave. And so what do you think? Should Dave go ahead and go off trail, dig a cat hole, or wait for it to get to that privy that's up the trail?
Well, I don't want to speak for Dave and how badly he has to go, but I mean, if nature is calling, Dave has to answer. So I think Dave is going to walk off trail and dig a cat hole 150 feet from the trail.
Yeah, absolutely. So in most places in the Adirondacks and the high peaks, it is acceptable to go ahead and dispose of your waste via burial in a cat hole. And so the best way to do that, as you said, I know the regulation there was 150 feet, and in other places we as a rule of thumb just recommend 200 feet just to be safe,
which is about 70
big steps.
Okay,
and
great.
And so we go, and then we make sure we find a place with some nice soft organic soil. We'll go ahead and we'll take another great thing when we're planning ahead and preparing is to bring a trowel with us. And so using that trowel, we can go ahead and dig a 6 to 8 inch hole, which oftentimes a lot of trowels, the blade on those trowels is around 6 inches. So that's a really good way to measure that hole. And so once we've dug a 6 to 8 inch hole, we can go ahead and deposit our waste into that hole. And 6 to 8 inches is a great range because at that depth, on average across the United States, that's where you're going to find the most beneficial microorganisms that will help break down that poop at the fastest rate. Mm-hmm. And so what we generally recommend doing is that, it's okay to go ahead and deposit our poop into that hole, but we'll go ahead and pack out our toilet paper. And so something that Monika and I carry with us when we're out backpacking or hiking is a FOPO bag. And FOPO stands for fear of packing out. And so oftentimes we'll take maybe an old Ziploc that we've used for something else, wrap it in some duct tape, which then makes it a little bit more durable, but then also kind of gives us some privacy so you don't have to see what's going into that Ziploc. And then we'll have that in our backpack with maybe our other poop kit supplies such as toilet paper and hand sanitizer. Mm-hmm. And then we can go ahead and pack out our toilet paper that way.
And burying your waste is one of the biggest impacts that we experienced during our time in the high peaks. And so we went on hikes with Summit Stewards and watched them have to bury human waste more than once. And it's definitely something that's important to talk about because it can be kind of weird and awkward. And if you're new to it, that is totally normal. And it's totally normal to feel unsure of what to do and to not want to ask somebody. So I Leave No Trace, we're all about, talking with people to kind of break those barriers down about how it's an uncomfortable thing so that we can really learn from one another and make sure that we're disposing of our waste in a way that it's not unsightly or smelly for other visitors and that animals aren't attracted to it. Because more than once hiking in the Adirondacks, I've come across, some like leftover toilet paper under a rock, and that there's normally something else that's attached with that. So, yeah, exactly. So making sure that we do what we can. Of course, it's always great to know if there is a toilet on the trail. But it's also great to be prepared if there is not a privy, if there's not a thunderbox that's going to be on the trail that you're at. So definitely figuring that out ahead of time, but having those supplies is great. One other thing that we'll talk about with waste, let's say that you are out on a trail and we're hiking up Mt Marcy, and we see a plastic water bottle. What do you do when you see trash along the trail, and what do you think we should do, James?
Sure. I always just have an extra big Ziploc freezer bag that I throw trash into when I go up when I find it. But I've actually never found an entire water bottle. I have, usually the stray candy wrappers and whatnot, stuff like that. But I tend to just pick it up. Pretty easy to do. Toss it in your bag. Carry on with your day. But you tell me now what I should do and what I should have done.
No, that is great. That is great to pick it up. And I think the important thing to address when it comes to finding trash and litter on the trail is people's level of comfortability. There's kind of this ethical dilemma, right? If you didn't have a bag, we of course always suggest for you to have a bag as you do, James, and so that you can go ahead and pack out that litter. The best thing for everybody to do is to always make sure that you're packing out your own trash so that others aren't having to pack out your trash. Most people aren't intentionally littering, is what we find. It's really more, that accidental wrapper that blew out of your hand or out of your backpack, but still doing what we can to also seek out alternatives to single-use items and packaging our food ahead of time, which goes back to that plan ahead and prepare. So making sure that we are bringing as little waste as possible out onto the trail. But you're totally right. If you find that trash, doing what you can to pick it up, but also honoring that if you don't feel comfortable picking something up, such as if you see a glove or a sock, which is something that I've seen out on the trails, you can sometimes be worried that was used for something else, and maybe you don't have the right equipment, like say gloves or something that you'll feel safe picking up that trash. So also honoring that right now in times of COVID, maybe people don't feel as comfortable to be picking up trash. Do what you can to feel safe, but also let's work together to, protect the natural world.
Yes, I would agree tremendously with that. And another plug for trekking poles. You can just stab the trash, toss it in your Ziploc bag, and you never touched it, and then it was not really a big deal. Another nice use for trekking poles.
Totally, yeah.
All right, so number 4. So we've picked up the water bottle. We've pooped into a cat hole that we dug and then buried. So now leave what you find. So now if I find the water bottle there, I shouldn't leave it, but there's other things that I should leave. Take us through it.
Yeah. So principle number 4, like Monika mentioned earlier, think about it like you're taking a picture of something. So say we're walking along the trail and we see some of those beautiful maidenhair ferns that we see along the trails sometimes in the Adirondacks. And they're just so pretty. They don't grow where I live. And I really want to, show it to, my friends and family. There's a lot of them here. Maybe I'll go ahead and just pick them and bring them home. What do you think?
I know that we should take nothing but pictures and leave nothing but footprints. So we're going to leave it there so that other people can enjoy it like I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so we always think about, if it brings you joy and it's something that you really enjoyed, maybe think about how that can, somebody else can have that experience as well. So there's other options that we think about, such as, if you do have your camera, maybe taking a picture, or if you're, more artistically inclined, maybe painting a picture or drawing it, or maybe even singing a song about it that can express how you feel about it. There's lots of ways that we can admire nature and leave what we find. But then furthermore, thinking about that, doing our best to make sure that we're limiting the spread of introduced species from one ecosystem to another. Something that when we talked with land managers in the Adirondacks, that was a really big concern, especially with aquatic invasives, was moving them from one body of water to the other. So something that we always recommend is just making sure to do our best to clean, drain, and dry our watercrafts when we are moving from one body of water to another, so that we can make sure that we're limiting that spread. So that's another way that we can leave what we find.
Yeah, that's been a big issue around here. All the lakes and all the boat launches, they all have quite a bit of the in aquatic species that shouldn't be here. They're pushing that initiative very well, at least what I see at all the boat launches. And as somebody who doesn't have a boat, I hope to be in that tax bracket one day where I can have a boat. But for right now, I do not. But I do see those signs at every boat launch that I go to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's important to honor that, depending on the species, it could be introduced to an area and not have, any issue with the other organisms that it's interacting with. So when we talk about aquatic hitchhikers or introduced species, we're really talking about just only the species that are sorry.
like the problem maker species, the ones that are out competing.
Yes.
Maybe more. Other species that are already there.
So you can have introduced species that actually don't create a negative impact.
Got it. Sure. Well, that's good to know. So continuing on with our virtual hike up Mt Marcy. So we made it to the summit. It's been a great morning. We pooped in the woods. We picked up some trash. We hiked up some slabs. We're planned ahead, so we know how long this trip is. And now we're going back down the other side of the mountain. We're going past the Four Corners, and we're hiking all the way down to Feldspar Brook, where we're going to camp for the night. And now we'll get into